Hey everyone, this is Annie from Style Collective, and today I am here with Amanda. We are starting a little mini series on the website, and it's going to be all about an LLC, how and why you need to set one up. The second part will be about expenses, what you need to track, how you track them, and then the last part of the series will be about the business best practices that you need to know about. So, Amanda is here today and she's going to introduce herself before we get started.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie. My name is Amanda Russell, and I am a business finance coach. I work especially with single owner businesses who are doing services for their businesses, and I help people set up their accounting and tax systems, do general finance, and really use their accounting numbers to plan their business and grow.
Amanda and I have been talking for the last couple of weeks, and I told her that it's pretty difficult to find someone in tax and knows like laws around blogging, and we had gone back and forth, and I was like, this would be perfect to bring to the Style Collective community to help answer some of the questions around blogging and when you want to start your LLC and how you do it specifically in this industry. So that leads me to the first question, which is when is the right time to set up an LLC as a blogger?
Well, I think it really comes down to when you want to grow a business. If it's just something you're doing on the side and you don't really want to develop into a business, then you really don't need to do an LLC, because forming the LLC will generate some more business requirements, which we'll talk about. So yeah, I think it really comes down to when you want to grow into a business, and if the types of brands in your case or businesses that you're working with, if they respect the LLC more. I think it has a lot to do with perception of professionalism as well.
So what are the benefits to setting up an LLC if you do decide to go that route? So you decide that your blog is a business, meaning that it's going to generate income for you. So what are the benefits to setting it up as an LLC versus just doing the expenses on your regular tax form?
Well, doing the LLC doesn't have to necessarily change anything for taxes, which is one of the benefits. Because if you create a business, then for taxes, it's a lot more work and you really need to hire people. But with the LLC, you can get away with not hiring anyone because it can stay the exact same as when you don't have an LLC for taxes. Basically, the IRS didn't make a tax form for the LLC, so you're still just self-employed for taxes, which is convenient because you're still getting to create a business, which is kind of the benefits, is that you're getting to create an actual business. People recognize LLC as a business that you took those extra steps. And like I said, if your goal is to grow, the additional requirements for the LLC really do help you treat your business more like a business, which, if you want to make more money, is helpful.
Okay, so I know that you have a very helpful infographic about how to set up an LLC, and we're going to share that in the links in this post underneath the video. Any tips that you want to share from that infographic?
Sure, yeah, it's really simple to set up yourself, which is another benefit. I can't technically recommend that you do it yourself because, of course, it's I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give that type of advice, but I set them up for people, and they were created to make starting a business easier. So, with that in mind, it's certainly doable, and those are the steps I laid out in the infographic. As far as benefits, though, there's one other thing I'd mention that's kind of a big thing. It's the technical benefit of the LLC, which is that you're protected from legal liability. So if you're sued, which in blogging may or may not be kind of a big deal, you guys would probably know more than me as far as if that's something that kind of comes up for brand bloggers. Um, but because if it is something that comes up and people are sued, then having the LLC is a big benefit because it protects your house, your retirement plan. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can be held liable if you're sued and found at fault to pay. Now, that's kind of the technical reason that a lawyer will tell you to form an LLC. Honestly, that rarely happens.
Yeah.
Like, for you to be found at fault, you really have to do some things wrong. So, at the same time, I think it's really the biggest benefit is that initial reason I was saying about treating your business like a business. People recognize it, they give respect to that you've taken those steps as a business, and you can do it yourself.
So that infographic is just gold. It really lays out every step and makes it easy and simple, and you don't have to hire someone to do it for you or help you. Like, you just follow the steps and you can do it yourself and literally be set up, I would say, within a month, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's about how long. I mean, yeah, you can do all the steps in a week, really, but then waiting to hear back from the state, depending on how long your
Yeah.
state takes. We really do live in an amazing economic system for small business. Like, people have fought for these rules that really do favor us. And they make it so that anyone, if you have the intent to make money, the rules are based on intent.
Okay.
So when you intend to make money in a business, you're a business. Now, the difference is if you haven't formed an LLC or a more complicated type of business, the legal term is sole proprietor.
Okay.
That's if you just get a 1099 from someone. If you do work for someone once and you aren't paid as an employee, you're a sole proprietor, you're self-employed, and you can deduct every business expense. And so that's one of the convenient things is that the LLC, there's no actual difference for the personal taxes, which is good to know because I do think that sometimes people will be charging for, I've seen some people get so kind of confused and they think that they need to do these extra things to get write-offs and stuff. And then they end up in more complicated situations in the LLC, like the S Corp. Until you're hiring all professionals to do everything for you, do not go near an S Corp.
So let's get into the next question, which is how do you track your expenses? I've seen a lot of questions around this, like, is there a certain software that you recommend? Can you just do a spreadsheet? What's frowned upon and what's good? What's good to do? What's best practices for tracking your expenses?
The main thing is that you keep a complete record, which just means everything in one place.
Okay.
Income, expenses, everything. And when you form the LLC, there is a little more to keep track of. Like, when you put money into the business, if you need to pay expenses and you don't have, money in that account. So there's kind of more things that come into play, assets. But the general, as far as how to do it, would be keeping everything in one place. And it doesn't matter if that's a spreadsheet or software. Typically, if you don't have a lot going on, you have a few expenses, a few paychecks, then a spreadsheet makes sense because the amount of time it takes you to maintain that would be the amount of time it would take you to set up something. But once you have, over 10 transactions a month, maybe, you certainly can set up something that's automated and you don't have to really do much. So for that, I recommend using Xero accounting software. If you're doing services, you're selling your time, or you have a team that you have them do services for people, either way, and then that's automated. It can be automated with your payment processor, whatever, or your invoicing software. And Xero is catching up to QuickBooks. If you aren't going to have a relationship with a bookkeeper who can help you, you really want to stick to a spreadsheet. Because although the software companies will advertise that anyone can do it, they are joking. But you can find people who know, like, especially Xero software is awesome. So, like, I've helped people set it up and then teach them how to use it. And then them and an assistant will maintain it going forward, stuff like that. So you certainly can make everything automated once you get to that point. But, I've seen people use spreadsheets for a long time, too, and it works for them. So I do recommend sticking with a spreadsheet, if you don't want to hire someone. If
Okay.
you don't want to hire a bookkeeper, probably sticking with a spreadsheet. I've seen people do software and do it well, but it can be really overwhelming if you don't know it.
So separate checking accounts and banking accounts. What are your thoughts on this? Also, this kind of ties to tracking your expenses. I think that it makes it a lot easier to track your expenses, but is there a legal part of this? Once you are an LLC, do you have to have a separate checking account and a banking account?
So that's one of the big things with the LLC is that for it to actually exist, you have to actually treat it like a business,
Okay.
like how you would treat your last employer. So you have to keep the money totally separate. If you pay for something out of your personal money, it's not an expense for the LLC. Now, you can of course write it off. You just have to do it like you would have with your last employer. They reimburse you. You give them the receipt with all the information. So with the LLC, it is required that they have their own bank accounts because it has to be separate. Now, of course, that's only in the situation where you're sued that this is like, which we already said doesn't necessarily happen.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will set up an LLC and not do the separate bank account. So don't freak out if, you're one of those many, many people. But you can take it as an opportunity to really get on that. And because it really does help. We are not very good human calculators. So even when you're self-employed, I recommend using a separate bank account because this whole process of keeping track of everything gets so much easier when everything's in one place.
Yep.
And if you fall behind, it's all there. And one tip I would give, because I know some people will say, well, I don't want to move the money around, and I don't make enough. But if you open the account where your personal account is, then you can transfer instantly.
I have one more question. What is the threshold for revenue or income that you receive that takes you from just being a hobby, having your blog as a hobby, to it actually being a business? I've heard a couple different numbers floating around. I've heard $400, I've heard $600, but what is the actual number that you're now considered a business and it would be, it would behoove you to form an LLC?
The difference between a hobby and a business is that a hobby is something you receive money for that you do for fun, that your goal isn't for it to be a business. That's really the difference. Now, the reason a lot of people have heard about money and hobby is because the IRS used to use a criteria that if you reported a loss 3 out of 5 years, you may be considered to be looked at as a hobby.
Okay.
I've no longer heard of that being active anymore, probably for the reason because it didn't really represent the rules. If you have a loss because you're investing in your business, it's fine to deduct it. You deduct it from other income. You could be starting, we have service businesses, but if you do product businesses or tech businesses, they can have huge investments and you can deduct if you have a loss. It can look suspicious if you're deducting more than you have income or a spouse or somewhere that you're getting the money, right? Or you can certainly expect an audit if you deduct losses for more than 3 years and you don't have other income on your return. I would expect to keep good records. But as far as the hobby to business, it's just intention.
Okay.
Now, the $400 is... So on your business tax form with your personal, you have income and then you have all of your expenses. And you minus all the expenses from the income and you have your net income. So whatever that amount is, whether it's negative or positive, it goes to your income taxes. And it's taxed for income taxes. But if it's below 400, you don't pay self-employment taxes.
Ooh, tell us more about self-employment taxes. I feel like this is something that will come as a surprise.
Okay, and it's not as bad as some people can make it out because if you were a corporation or one of those separate business types, they pay taxes, and then they give you forms and then you pay taxes.
Mm-hmm.
With the self-employment tax, it's just a 15.3%. And once you get over 100 and between 110, 120 now, a lot of that phases out.
Okay.
So it's not as bad as it can seem. And that amount is only based on 92% of that net income from your business.
Okay.
So basically, it's more like 12%. So basically, your net income goes to your income taxes for your income tax.
Okay, and anything under $400 does not have self-employment tax.
But it still goes for income tax.
Yes.
Self-employment taxes are then an additional to income tax that is done with your personal tax return. So your Schedule C is what your business is reported on. And then a Schedule SE will be with that, which calculates the 92.35% and then 15.3% for self-employment tax.
Gotcha.
But you also get a deduction on your personal taxes for half of the self-employment taxes you paid.
Okay, that's nice.
Software can be really good. I recommend using Free Tax USA. They're super affordable and really they're free for federal. Exactly like TurboTax, only 2% of the cost.
So tell us about some of the other resources that you have on your website that we can use for calculating our taxes, or we have the infographic for setting up the LLC, but tell us about the spreadsheet.
Okay, so the spreadsheet it's really set up for, I know a lot of people didn't keep track of all of their income and expenses in one place throughout 2016. So now, before you can file taxes, you really want to get that all together. And then it's good to have. So you get it together, you have it, and then it'll kind of get you thinking about your business money for 2017. And you can continue to use it. Like if you don't have that much stuff, you can continue to use it as your accounting software for 2017 as well.
Okay.
So there's that. You just go month by month through your records, whether you have a bag of receipts or you have, go through your bank account and credit card. And then just put everything that's business in the columns for each month.
Okay.
Then fourth quarter estimated taxes is due January 17th.
Yep.
So my spreadsheet does a pretty quick calculation, but you do have to enter some things, and it'll tell you if you owe quarterly taxes. Everyone does have to pay quarterly.
Yeah. I think that's everything about an LLC, how and why you need to set it up. If you guys have any additional questions about this topic, the topic of setting up your LLC, ask us in comments below. We'll be online to answer your questions as they come in, and we'll also leave a bunch of links underneath this video showing you the link to the infographic for setting up your LLC, the awesome spreadsheet that Amanda talked about, and then her website that you can check out for other tips about taxes and what you need to know, because she is our business expert with this stuff, this complicated stuff. Thank you so much for joining us today, Amanda, and we can't wait to see you again next month where we talk all about expenses.